Good evening. I'm Vicki George. Welcome to the 2019 Kentucky gubernatorial debate. We are on the campus of Bellarmine University. Joining me on stage tonight is Republican incumbent Governor Matt Bevin, Democratic candidate Attorney General Andy Beshear. Thank you both for joining us tonight.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you to the Kentucky Louisville League of Women Voters for partnering with WLKY and providing the questions for tonight's debate. A big welcome to our audience here at the Crawley Theater, and I want to thank you in advance for following the debate rules. Please give each candidate the opportunity to answer the questions without being interrupted. No clapping, no cheering. We begin tonight with opening statements. Each candidate will have 90 seconds for opening remarks. Mr. Bevin won the coin toss. He will begin.
Excellent. I want to say thank you to you, Vicki, for hosting this, to Bellarmine University, to the Kentucky League of Women Voters. I want to thank my wife and my children. I want to thank the Attorney General's wife and his children. It's a grind to go through these things, and as we get closer now, 10 days out, those of you that are watching on TV, those of you that are in this audience, have a decision to make. I want to just tell you briefly about myself. We'll talk over the next hour about a lot of ideas. But I'm a guy who grew up in a humble circumstance, financially below the poverty level, but blessed to be born into a home where a mother and father taught me to respect God and country. I'm saved by grace. I'm proud to be an American. I'm a father of 9 children. I'm a military veteran. I serve this nation in uniform. And as somebody who loves Kentucky and is fighting for this Kentucky, I ran 4 years ago on what I called a blueprint for a better Kentucky. I said that I'm going to stop kicking cans down the road if elected. I put out this blueprint, and it had a whole lot of things that frankly were going to be controversial, and they have been. And we've not even gotten them all done yet. But the bottom line is this: we're making incredible strides. Record levels of economic development. We'll talk about those things. But I stand for life. I stand for the Constitution. I stand with the President of the United States of America. And I stand for ensuring that the opportunities ahead of us are the best they've ever been, because we take on the tough issues and we hold Kentucky up and make it the greatest version of itself that it can possibly be.
Mr. Beshear.
Thank you to WLKY, the League of Women Voters, and Bellarmine for having us. We are 10 days from this election, and I am fired up. I'm fired up because I see an energy and a hunger all across Kentucky, a hunger for a governor that listens more than he talks, a hunger for a governor that solves more problems than he creates, and a hunger for a governor that would never engage in bullying or name-calling, but instead spends all his time addressing the challenges in front of us. That's the type of governor that I want to be. One for every Democrat, Republican, Independent, one that fights for Eastern, Western, Northern, and Central Kentucky. But when I say I want to be a governor for everybody, I mean it. That means we've got to fight for the lost and the lonely and the left behind. I see a Kentucky where for the last 4 years we have been divided. And I see a governor that's tried to create an us versus a them. I was born and raised in this state. I love this Commonwealth. And I know we cannot move forward if we continue to divide ourselves. If we have a this side or a that side. We can't have an us and a them. We can only have a we. And we can only move forward together. I believe what separates us on this stage is I have a vision. I have a vision for a bigger, better, brighter Kentucky. One where we can be a national leader in areas like agri-tech, advanced manufacturing, and healthcare. One where we live every day caring about our neighbors and ensuring everyone has access to affordable healthcare. I believe in lifting up our public education system, in ending the bullying we've seen on our teachers, and moving forward together for our children.
All right, now on to the questions. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question. Candidates will be allowed a 30-second rebuttal if needed for clarification. Mr. Beshear will receive question number 1 first. Voters are frustrated by negative behavior from politicians. As governor, how will you foster civil discourse and bipartisan cooperation to solve the problems facing Kentucky?
We've had a tough last 4 years. We've seen a governor that's attacked our teachers, called them names, accused them of causing crimes to children. We've seen attacks on ministers that don't agree with his plans. And folks, we desperately need a change in tone. This election is going to determine whether the behavior of our current governor is the exception or the rule. I think it has to be the exception. It's time for a governor that can bring us together, that stops dividing us, and that can change the tone to one of constructive dialogue. You can't call people names and then ask them to sit down at the table with you. I'm committed to working with everybody who wants a better Kentucky. That's Democrats, Republicans, Independents, but it's also the people all across Kentucky. Under this administration, no one will ever be locked out of their capital ever again. Instead, everyone will be invited in to share their ideas, because the best ideas often come from outside of that building. Imagine a state with unity of purpose, where we know public education, pensions, health care, and jobs aren't partisan. They're just good for all of us.
Mr. Bevin.
I would say this: political discourse is indeed missing in our society. I took a moment before we began this debate this evening. I went outside to thank the men and women on both sides that were out there waving signs. They were waving signs in support of me and in support of the Attorney General. And I was struck by the difference even among those that were waving signs. Some were grateful, and on both sides, that I came out and said hello to them and thanked them. But there was a level of vitriol that came from some, including swear words and just nastiness, that unfortunately has become a part of what we see now. It does fall indeed upon us in the political world to be mindful of this, no question about it. But it also falls on us as parents. It starts in our homes. It starts in our civic organizations. It does continue into our classrooms and into our scout troops. It includes our communities. It includes our churches. Every single one of us has a responsibility, but it starts with each one of us as an individual. This is something that I have fought for, is to ensure that we try to treat people with respect. We're always going to have disagreements, but I'm grateful that we live in America where we have the ability to disagree.
Mr. Beshear, rebuttal.
Those folks outside that this governor just accused of vitriol or swear words are teachers. They are out there wearing red, and they have been bullied for far too long. And the attacks even continue tonight. These are amazing public servants that need to be lifted up, not pushed down. These are folks that show up every single day and work even though we don't pay them enough. It's like my friend Laura, who has to drive an Uber at night just to make ends meet after she teaches during the day. I think in an earlier debate, this governor said that's America. It's not. It's wrong. We ought to do better. We ought to do better for them.
Let me say one thing real quickly. Number one, the person that I spoke to and was speaking of was clearly not a teacher, and I was out there. You were not. And so for you to make an assumption about who I spoke to or what they said or who they were is, I think, a big mistake on your part.
Mr. Bevin, let's move on to question number 2, please.
No, I
the
have
historic underfunding of Kentucky's public pensions has had wide-ranging impacts, including significant budget cuts. What remains to be done to fully stabilize Kentucky's pension system, and how do you plan on making sure such measures are enacted?
The pension system has collapsed in Kentucky, and public pension systems in America have, and I'll tell you why simply. In 1 minute, it's tough, but there used to be 30 people down here for everybody that was retired. And then there were 20, and then 15, and then 12, and then 10. Social Security only has 3.5 paying in for everyone that's retired, and nobody believes Social Security will last. But I'll tell you what's tragic is that Kentucky doesn't have 3.5 paying in, has less than one person paying in for everybody that's retired. The system has collapsed. The only way to save it, to keep the promise that has been made to people, the only way, is to change the structure for future employees. It is not possible to continue to promise future people the very same thing that current and past employees have been promised if there is to be any chance that any of them will get what's been promised to them. It's about math, it's about finances, it's about actuarial reality. And it's important that we stop kicking this can down the road. I'm the only governor to ever fully fund this pension in Kentucky history, and I'll continue to do so, and I'll fight to make sure that it's required by law.
Mr. Beshear.
A pension is a promise. It is a promise we made to every teacher, police officer, firefighter, and social worker, that although we don't pay them enough for critically important work, we would make it up with a secure retirement. But this governor and the legislature broke that promise. They tried to illegally cut the retirements of over 200,000 public servants, and worse, they put it in a sewer bill. That shows you what they think of us. But we defeated them 7-0 in front of the Supreme Court. So what are they doing now? They're pushing all of those costs down on cities and counties. And those cities and counties are trying to raise our taxes. Matt Bevin is raising our taxes to try to pay for this pension system. It's time for new dedicated revenue. It's got to be in the form of expanded gaming, where we lose $550 million a year. It's got to be in the form of medicinal marijuana. It's got to be in the form of ending these tax incentives for companies that are paying cut-rate salaries to our families. And let's close a few loopholes. People who buy private jets, they can afford to pay sales tax. Now, that's not the state plane. That's a private jet.
Mr. Bevin, rebuttal.
I think that was meant to be funny. I would say this. We talk about breaking promises. It's interesting. The only legislature, the only governor that in the history of the state has ever fully funded the pension, ever, is myself and the current legislature. We have tried through legislation to require this, but it has been fought. It is not possible to save the system if we keep making promises to people that we know we can't deliver on. It is important to be honest here. Someone said as we began that this is serious business. It is serious business. It's also math, and we cannot make promises that there is no money from the taxpayers to back up.
Mr. Beshear, question number 3, please. Cities like Louisville are struggling with skyrocketing pension costs, yet their leaders say they are hindered by state law and their ability to raise additional revenue. What changes, if any, do you support to allow cities to raise more money?
Well, thank you for the question, and if I can just respond a little bit to what we just heard. Folks, there's a reason that not just the KEA, but the Fraternal Order of Police have endorsed my ticket. It's because they trust us to address this pension system. And I believe police are pretty good at getting to the facts and ultimately making the judgment about who can move them forward and what the underlying facts are. The reason that our counties are scrambling for this extra revenue is this governor has pushed all of those pension costs down on top of them. Instead of looking at new revenue sources where Indiana's eaten our lunch and Tennessee just legalized sports betting, that here in this market on your station, we get advertisements for sports betting. We continue to try to push those costs down on cities and counties. We're going to legalize casino gaming. We're going to legalize sports betting. We're going to pave the way for online poker. We're going to create the type of revenue that Indiana's taken from us and using on their roads and putting towards their pensions. Let's step up. Let's do the right thing. Let's stop the bleeding, and let's not continue to give excuses why we can't create new revenue.
Mr. Bevin.
Let me just start by saying we had record levels of revenue last year in Kentucky, and that was after we cut both the personal and the corporate income tax rates by 17%, and we had the highest level of revenue in the history of Kentucky. You talk about the law enforcement, the CLEF fund. I'm the only governor that's never swept those CLEF dollars that are supposed to go to our law enforcement officers. The previous governor, who happened to share the same name as the man to my right, is a man who took $117 out of there in 8 years to spend on other things. I've never done that. I never will. I've also never swept the lottery funds, and I never will. 100% has gone to education for the very first time. You talk about the difficulty of budgets and of our counties. No question. Counties have challenges because they are the same challenges that the state has. It's called financial reality and the burden of handling more retirees than there are workers. This is not going to go away with diatribe. It's not going to go away with wishful thinking. And I can tell you right now, there is 0% chance that this legislature will ever pass casino gambling in this state. They have said this explicitly. They said this for the last 10 years in a row.
Mr. Beshear, rebuttal.
Only one of us on this stage has tried to illegally cut the pensions of over 200,000 public servants, and that's Matt Bevin. Only one person on this stage wants to push for new dedicated revenue towards that pension system, and that's me.
Our fourth question goes to Mr. Bevin. What are your specific proposals to address economic development and jobs in both urban and rural areas?
Let me just say this. You keep hearing the word tried to cut. Didn't try to cut. Have never tried to cut these pensions. I'm trying to save the pensions. With respect to the fact that we need economic development, no question. Every single thing that we are talking about, every dollar that needs to be spent, every road, every textbook, every taxpayer dollar spent on paying state employees, all of this is paid for out of taxes that come from people who live here, work here, and pay taxes. And what I have done, I'm the only one on this stage that's ever created a job in the private sector, the only one. And this is something that I did in the private sector, and it's something that I've done. We had 57,000 new jobs in this state, the most people working now in Kentucky in history. These are both records, record levels of exports, record levels of employment, record levels of revenue, record levels of everything positive from an economic development standpoint. And these are from east to west, urban and rural, and these will continue to be my focus as we go forward in the years ahead.
Mr. Beshear.
I believe that if you work a hard week, you ought to make enough money to raise your family working just that one job. But I think the governor's answer shows how truly out of touch he is, because our families aren't feeling this prosperity. It's all going to that out-of-state CEO. For most of our families, they're working just as hard as they always have, but their wages rarely go up. But the price of groceries, of pharmaceuticals, the cost of everything just to get by goes up month after month. So our families are working hard, but they are falling further behind. I have a vision where we won't be the third poorest state in the country, which we are, but where we can be a national and an international leader. It's about creating an agri-tech sector where we have to increase our food supply by 70% in the next 30 years just to feed the world's population. That can create six-figure jobs all across the Commonwealth, especially in rural Kentucky. And just remember, it's about 82% of jobs that this governor claims he's been created have been in 2 cities. Everybody else is being left out. I believe if you live in Western Kentucky or Eastern Kentucky, you ought to be able to get a good job in your community.
Mr. Bevin, rebuttal.
I will simply say this. This is not true, these facts. I don't have time to rebut every one of them, but I will say this. Ask the people in Wickliffe, where I was yesterday. Pretty rural, pretty far western, pretty grateful for the fact that hundreds of jobs have been recently brought into those communities. Ask people in other places. And again, we keep ripping the people. Ask Meade County, where Nucor is building a $1.5 billion plant. And yet, let me just simply say this. Ford, Toyota, UPS, Nucor, Amazon, all of these companies that have employed so many people and so many others as well, GE right here in town, they all have out-of-state CEOs. No governor who's worth his salt would ever rip out-of-state CEOs because the lifeblood of our future is dependent on them.
Mr. Beshear, what are your specific tax reform proposals to help working and middle-class families?
I appreciate the question, but I just heard that the future of our Commonwealth depends on out-of-state CEOs. I couldn't disagree more. The future of our Commonwealth is found in our classrooms right now. It's the workforce that we're creating. It's the small businesses that create more jobs every single year than any out-of-state CEO provides us. Folks, I am with our families. This governor is certainly with those out-of-state CEOs. And what he announced the other day, his tax proposal would harm almost all of us. He wants to cut taxes for him and his buddies, the wealthiest. I think he calls them job creators. He thinks there's 2 different classes of people. I don't agree. At the same time he wants to cut their taxes, he wants to raise the sales tax on everybody else. I will never allow taxes to go up on those that are one paycheck away from falling into poverty. It is time for new dedicated revenue. We've got more than $550 million just sitting out there for us to take advantage of. And to push costs down on cities and counties and have them raise taxes, to talk about raising sales taxes when people are already struggling, that's wrong.
Who do you think is in these casinos that you keep promising that you'll never be able to deliver on? It's a whole lot of people that are one paycheck away from exactly what you described. The reality is that is one of the cruelest, most regressive things you could ever do to this state, is to try to force on us that which we clearly don't want, which our legislators don't want, which we have not wanted for years. And this hypothetical $550 million is not true. I will remind you as well, how did we get into this place that we are? Because we had one party in charge of this state for 96 straight years in terms of appropriations, in terms of our House of Representatives. I'm the 4th Republican in 100 years. I will say this, if we want to see change, if we want to see progress, if we want a brighter future, it's time to keep going forward and not going backwards.
Mr. Beshear, rebuttal.
I'll tell you who's in those casinos. It's Kentuckians. You go right across the river to where we are right now, and there's a casino, and if you walk through the parking lot, virtually every license plate is from a Kentuckian. And they are spending their entertainment dollars there, and Indiana's taking a cut to pay for its roads, to possibly put towards its pensions, to try to provide health care for folks, to fund public education. This is a state run by the vice president previously who's coming in to campaign for this governor. We need expanded gaming right here in Kentucky. It's a way that we can create the revenue we need, dedicated revenue for our pension system.
Mr. Bevin, many Kentuckians who work full-time jobs struggle to support their families because of low wages compared to other states. What would you do to raise wages of workers in Kentucky?
The best way to raise wages is to have competition for skills and to make sure that there's training so that people have the skills they need for the 21st century. It is not the role of government, nor does it ever last more than a short blip when government forces an increase in wages. I'm somebody who grew up below the poverty level. I understand from firsthand experience what it is like. I know what it's like to have no health care coverage. These are experiences that I had. First time I had health care coverage, I was in my 20s. I was an active duty Army officer. I know what it's like to live the American dream, to pursue opportunity, and here's what I know. The more I learned, the more skills I had, the more people competed for my ability, and the more people competed for my ability, the more power I had in figuring out what I was going to be paid. We've seen wages going up in this state for the first time in years. Are we still near the bottom? Yeah, we are. But guess what? We're making progress for the first time ever because we've turned the direction after 96 years of bad leadership. And we've started to move in a new direction. And again, it's about moving forward. I'm the only one that's ever created jobs on this stage. The only one. The first person my opponent ever hired is watching this debate from prison.
Mr. Beshear.
We are 47th in the country in per capita income. That means we're the third poorest. Over 70 counties had their unemployment go up in the last year. And there are many counties, especially in eastern Kentucky, where per capita income is going down. Our people are struggling. This prosperity that the governor talks about isn't reaching us. I'm going to be a governor that always fights for our families, that doesn't rely on any number of jobs announced that they're not all created. Just ask Pike County, who was banking on a company called Interblue. This governor announced there'd be hundreds of jobs, $100 million plus in investment. Didn't happen, wasn't ever going to happen. It was simply false hope. It's time we make the investments in areas where we can create six-figure jobs across Kentucky, where we decide those areas where we can be a leader, again, like agritech, advanced manufacturing, robotics, the engineering portion of that, artificial intelligence, and healthcare. I'm tired of being last in things. By focusing and actually having a vision instead of more of the same, we can do so much more, and we can do it together.
Mr. Bevin.
It's been said, without vision, the people will perish. That's true, and indeed we did for the better part of a century. It's easy to sit here and say that people are struggling in different places, and you can always find an example of where that might be true. But it is imperative that we have somebody who can sit across the table from people that would look to create jobs here. And everybody who looks at these from the outside, Site Selection Magazine among others, Bloomberg among others, looks at Kentucky, looks at what we're doing relative to others in terms of capital being invested, jobs being created, and there are few, if any, states and none per capita that are doing more than we have for the last 4 years.
Mr. Beshear, our next question. Education is our next topic. On one hand, the dollar amount of per pupil funding is at an all-time high. On the other, that funding has decreased when adjusted for inflation. How will you address adequate funding for public education?
I believe in public education. I'm a graduate of Kentucky's public schools, and I believe in our teachers so much I selected one as my running mate. Jacqueline Coleman will be the first active educator since Martha Lane Collins to serve as lieutenant governor, and I think it's about time. We have an education plan out on andybeshear.com that again shows you vision. It talks about how we're going to shrink class size. We're going to provide a $2,000 across the board raise that our teachers have earned so that we can end this teacher shortage, because people shouldn't have a year-round sub for classes as important as algebra and other science classes. And we are always going to budget for public education first. Before we reach anything else, we're going to make sure that we are taking care of those students in the classroom. It is time that we look at raising that SEEK formula. We have got to make sure that each student is getting the funding they need, and don't believe that this governor somehow fully funded public education. Just ask Jacqueline Coleman, my running mate. Under his budget, she had to lay off 10 adults in her building. 10.
Mr. Bevin.
I will say this, when budgets are cut anywhere in America, private sector, public sector, people sometimes do lose their jobs, no question. But there are more people working today than ever in the history of Kentucky, specifically to public education. In my immediate family, my grandmother retired as a public school teacher. My father was a public school teacher. My brother and sister have both been public school teachers. My sister here in Jefferson County Public School System. She's still a 4th grade school teacher here in Kentucky. I understand this from firsthand experience. Last year, when thousands of students were left home as people came to Frankfort to let their voices be heard, in neighborhoods and communities and schools were disrupted, families and businesses. Some of those public school students were mine. You have never had a child in public school a day in your life, their lives. And it's crazy. You say you're for public school, but you've never trusted the public schools in our state with the education of your own children. And I think that speaks volumes at the end of the day. Here's what I know. We do owe money to everything that we have the money to provide it for. But every dollar we spend on anything comes at the expense of the taxpayers in our state.
Rebuttal, Mr. Beshear.
What speaks volumes is a governor that would go after somebody's kids.
Has nothing to do with your children.
I make you a few promises. I will never bully other Kentuckians from the governor's office. I will never try to tear people off of their health care. I will never break a promise that I have made to folks who have a solid retirement. Why? Because those are Kentucky values, and those are the values I was raised with. And no matter what my opponent says about me or to me tonight, I will never bring up his kids in this debate or any other.
Let me say something real quickly. I'm not challenging his children at all. This was a decision that you and your wife made.
You are continuing to go after my kids.
This is a challenge to you, and the decision you made, they did not decide where they would go to school. You chose to reject the public schools.
Let's move on to question 8,
I think I get to respond to that. Folks, my kids got an opportunity that every child should get. They got to go to preschool. That's what lets them be kindergarten ready when they get there, and every child deserves that opportunity. Because we have not funded universal pre-K, they had to go to a private preschool, and we fell in love with that school. But every year, I pay my property taxes to support our public schools. This governor has not only tried to get out of them on the mansion he bought at half price from a state contractor, he's even trying to appeal the amount to a board that he appointed. He wants to shortchange us that much. And my son this Saturday is taking the exam to head to a public middle school. We're excited and proud of him.
Time's up, please. Question number 8 continues with education. Mr. Bevin, do you support charter schools and private school vouchers? Why or why not?
Yes, I do. And I'll tell you, just for the exact same reason that the gentleman to my right just made. Every child deserves a chance. Absolutely, every child. Ask the kids in the inner city here in Louisville, among other places. They deserve a shot too, to the very same opportunities that you've been able to give to your children that I've had the opportunity to provide to mine, and so many watching have. Everybody does, whether they can afford to or not. Why should we not have tuition tax credits? Why should we not allow people like myself or like you or anyone else to be able to give money and to be able to get a credit for that from the state in order to be able to use those dollars for scholarships to allow a child to go to the school that their parents choose, just as you and your wife did? The bottom line is this: I do think we should give ourselves better opportunities, because take a look at the testing that's going on in this state. Look at Jefferson County. 70% of black kids in this entire county system cannot read at grade level. That is absolutely reprehensible. It's not acceptable to me, and we owe better choices to those in our inner cities and those in our rural communities alike.
Mr. Beshear.
Yeah, my wife is here with me tonight. I love you, Brittany. This governor owes you an apology. I'm pretty sure you're not going to get it. I am opposed to charter schools and these vouchers. This governor is the single greatest threat to public education we have ever seen. Just listen to that answer. His proposals, his policies threaten public school systems all around Kentucky and will result in the closure of schools if he gets his way. Listen, most of Kentucky, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, Republican, or independent, your kids go to public schools, and your system cannot afford a charter school. What he would do with funding, how it would be removed from the public system, would be detrimental to the children of this Commonwealth. Do our public schools need to do better? Of course they do, because every child we fail is all of our failures. But those systems need an ally, not an adversary. Not someone who appoints a board of education that cares more about for-profit charter schools than our kids. So I'm gonna make you a promise. In my very first week as governor, we're gonna get a whole new board of education, one that cares about our children.
Mr. Bevin, rebuttal.
It's interesting, actually, when I restructured the Board of Education in this state, I was sued by this guy, but now he's gonna do the very same thing on day one. I guess you've had a change of heart. I will say this, which is interesting. You talk about the focus on our schools. You keep talking about for-profit charter schools. There are none of those in Kentucky. Nobody has proposed bringing those to Kentucky. The legislation that has been passed only allows for public charter schools. They are paid for by public education dollars. They are staffed by public teachers, public school teachers who are qualified the same way as others. 100% of the children go there, are chosen to go there by their parents, and they are paid for with public education dollars. They're public schools.
Question number 9 goes to Mr. Beshear first. Will you support legislation to fully fund the requirements of the school safety bill that was passed in the last legislative session?
Absolutely. Every child deserves to be safe in their schools. And right now, we have far too many schools that have too many entrances and exits. They are sadly a soft target. We need to put the funding in to make sure that they are never preyed upon by someone who would commit violence. Each and every family ought to feel that their children are safe while they are in school. I believe that every school needs an SRO, and we need to move forward with that, but those SROs need the appropriate training to make sure that they are culturally sensitive, to make sure that the children that are in that school believe that they are there to help and to protect them. I believe that it is our responsibility to ensure the safety of each and every public school that's out there. But let me go back, if I can, to the funding issue. There is a teacher in Brandenburg who just had to combine her student loan with her child's student loan. If we believe we are fully funding public education, that this governor has done enough, just look at that. That's wrong.
Mr. Bevin.
It's remarkable. There's no correlation whatsoever to your student debt and whether or not we're funding education. We don't even know what you got a degree in.
What you're paying or not paying that teacher.
My question is this. The question you've asked is as it relates to what again? Remind me?
School safety bill.
School safety bill. I was the one leading the charge on this with our legislature. Of course I'm committed to this. I've sat with these families. You talk about apologies that are owed to people. You owe an apology or at least the courtesy of a response to the families in Marshall County that you stood on a stage in the last debate and said that you had met with them. You've not met with them. They don't know you. They've never met you, and you've not reached out to them since they have made it clear that they don't know you. So to the extent that you spoke to anybody, they don't know who it was that you spoke to, you owe them at least the courtesy of a reply. We do owe it to them to keep them safe, not the students and teachers alone, but the parents who send them there, the bus drivers who drive in and out of there. And I'm for making sure that we truly secure these campuses, and that includes making it possible for these not to be known as gun-free zones, because if there's no way to stop a threat, then people are going to continue to target our schools, our theaters, and other places that are known to be gun-free in their entirety.
Rebuttal, Mr. Beshear.
48 hours after the tragic shooting in Marshall County, I went down to the Judicial Center. I went to meet with the prosecutors because they have small offices, and I was committing every resource we have. I talked to one assistant prosecutor whose wife taught at the school, and he went there. We then met with the Commonwealth attorney, and the county attorney himself walked me up to the grand jury room where we talked with families that were there for the very first hearing. We talked about what the hearing was going to be like, and I pledged them every single resource which we've provided. We've helped the prosecutors every step of the way. We've had victims advocates at virtually every hearing, and we even just got a grant approved to create a safe space in Marshall County where people can come and watch the trial with victims advocates there, because that trial's in Hopkinsville, and we want to make sure the services are there to wrap around those victims.
Let's switch gears now to health care. Mr. Bevin, in your opinion, what should the state's government role be in health care? What's your plan to help Kentuckians gain access to better, more affordable health care, whether it's publicly or privately provided?
I will address that, but I'm still asking you publicly to respond to the letter written by the Copes and the Holtz and the other families. Respond to them.
I wrote
courtesy.
a letter back to the county judge who sent us one. It
Respond
went there
to the families.
earlier this week.
Respond to the families. They're asking to hear from you. With respect to health care, I'm the only one on this stage that has ever lived without health care coverage. I grew up that way. I'm the only one that has ever lived without coverage because of a pre-existing condition. There's a lot of talks that you give about how I want to take that away from people. Under your father, I lost my coverage because of a pre-existing condition. While he was the governor, not one person in this state has lost coverage due to a pre-existing condition since I've been governor. Not one person. And nor will they as long as I'm focused on this. Because here's the reality. We want not just health coverage, we want health outcomes and better health outcomes. And I believe that able-bodied, working-age men and women, people who could go to work, people who don't have dependents, should be doing something in exchange for the free health care that the men and women who go to work every day to provide to them may or may not have themselves, that they're paying for. I think everybody should be at the helm.
Mr. Beshear.
I believe that health care is a basic human right, and that everybody should be able to take their parents or their kids to a doctor when they're sick. That's why I'm fighting both this governor and the federal government, who are absolutely trying to tear away coverage for pre-existing conditions. And it's also why I'm going after big pharma that is gouging us day in and day out. This last week, I announced nearly $40 million of settlements for folks that gouged Medicaid or gouged women in this Commonwealth. I continue to go after the makers of insulin because they are charging $300, $400, $500 for a vial that costs just $7 to make. But let me say this governor's expanded Medicaid waiver is cruel. It's shown in Arkansas that the people it's going to kick off their coverage are people who are already working. It just creates bureaucratic red tape and ultimately tears health care away from people. And what did we learn just this last week? He's going to spend $270 million of your taxpayer dollars just to kick people off of health care. There couldn't be a bigger difference between the two of us in this race. I'm going to protect your pre-existing condition coverage.
Mr. Bevin, rebuttal.
A lot of lies there, and I'm going to try to counter them as best I can. Number one, nobody in this state has lost any coverage due to a pre-existing condition in the last 4 years. I'm the only one on this stage that ever has lost health care due to a pre-existing condition, and it was while your father was the governor. I will say this as well. the KHA, the Kentucky Hospital Association, supports this, not because this Medicaid waiver that we're looking for, not because it damages them or hurts their ability to provide, but because it gives them better ability to reach people. And it gives us better ability to get able-bodied people back into the workforce where Medicaid should not be a dead end in life. As far as the $271 million is concerned, that is the ceiling up to which we would be authorized to go. And even if we went there, it saves $500 million a year. So you get twice the return on that. But the truth be told, it will cost about $100 million a year to save 500, and more people will be getting health coverage, better health outcomes, and more people being engaged in the commercial market.
Time's up on that question. Let's move to number 11. The U.S. Supreme Court recently heard arguments for and against so-called work requirements for some Medicaid recipients. Where do you stand on these requirements and why, Mr. Beshear?
Well, again, I believe health care is a basic human right, and so on day one, I would rescind this Medicaid waiver. Folks, that's an independent report that states it's going to cost us $270 million to kick people off of their coverage. And the reason that no one has lost coverage for a pre-existing condition under this governor is the federal health care reform that he's trying to end. It was in Bowling Green a couple weeks ago that he said we should go back to how we treated pre-existing conditions before that health care reform. You know what happened? People lost their coverage, they ran out of money, and sometimes they even ran out of life. I went to church with a woman for about 10 years. She had numerous pre-existing conditions, very serious. Her last night on earth was Christmas Eve this last year, and she came to church and she stopped me as we were leaving that service. She said she wanted to thank me for fighting for health care reform because it had allowed her about 6 extra years with her family that she would not have otherwise had. She passed away that next day, but I'm going to continue to fight for her and families just like her all over this Commonwealth.
Mr. Bevin.
The families just like her and those that you just described, that was my family growing up. That was my family 8 years ago when we lost coverage. It is those, I am that family. And believe me, I fight for my family too. These are things I care about. But the question was about this health care waiver. You talk about health care being a universal right, but it's important to understand this. Somebody has to provide it. None of us have a right to force a person to go to medical school to provide medical services. We don't have a right to force somebody to treat someone if something costs money. It may be a universal desire, but to call it a right is a bit difficult when it costs money and requires a person to do something to provide that right. I think the key here is to figure out how we can ensure that people who can do for themselves do for themselves, and that we don't just seek coverage, but we get better health outcomes. Kentucky Health will get people engaged in their health outcomes because people that are engaged take better care of things. They do it with personal things, they do it with their own bodies, their own personal decisions. I want people to have what I didn't have when I was young.
Mr. Beshear, rebuttal.
Matt Bevin was not this woman's family. She was not a multimillionaire. And without mandatory coverage for pre-existing conditions, she would not have lived those last years of her life. Expanded Medicaid is working. Look at the colorectal cancer study. It shows that it's ultimately saving us money and it's saving lives. It's getting people into preventative care that otherwise wouldn't get there, and it's the moral thing to do. We didn't get the last 10,000 kids signed up for coverage in Kentucky until we got their families signed up for expanded Medicaid. We were a leader in health care reform before. We can be a leader in Kentucky again. One of the fastest growing parts of our economy. We should be stimulating it.
Mr. Bevin.
Let me just say this. I'll bet you one of these women's children has a chance to grow up to be a multimillionaire in America, and that's the greatness of this country.
Mr. Bevin, according to the National Safety Council, Kentucky ranks 5th in the U.S. for preventable deaths, largely due to the opioid epidemic. What specific plans do you have to address the health, mental health, and economic factors creating this epidemic?
There are several things that we have done and others that we will do. Since I was elected governor, there are several things, and I want to make mention of them because if you're watching, you should be aware of these. Help KY Now, Help Now KY. Let me try that again. FindHelpNowKY.org. Go to that website. An 800 number, 833-8KY-HELP. We have HopeAndHelpKY.com. And we have an angel initiative now in every single one of our state police posts where you can go into any one of these state police posts with drugs on you. You could be addicted. You could even have them in your system and on you. You will not be criminally charged. We will help you find help. That 800 number, 833-8KY-HELP, is staffed by a live person that will help you in Kentucky Last year, we saw the national average drop 5%. In Kentucky, we led the nation with a 15% decline in opioid deaths. And the reason being is because of the dollars we've put in. We've put in over $40 million, and we recently won a grant for $90 million to help us address this scourge in our state.
Mr. Beshear.
The opioid epidemic is a challenge of our times. It kills 30 people a week. And we have 100 babies born every month going through withdrawal. We absolutely have to respond faster, and we have to respond better. I'm raising my kids in the most dangerous time for drugs that we have ever seen, and the legacy I want to leave for them as governor is one where we get past this challenge that threatens each and every one of our families. As Attorney General, I launched a Kentucky opioid disposal program aimed at cleaning out every single medicine cabinet across Kentucky. When 80% of new addiction is still caused by pills, we must clean out every single one of those cabinets. But I've also been the most aggressive AG in the country at suing opioid manufacturers and distributors. The numbers don't lie. I've sued more of them than anyone else in this country, and we have won every motion and every argument in them. But this governor has stood in my way nearly every step. I sued a company called Johnson & Johnson, where Oklahoma got a $570 million verdict. He said he didn't agree with that or anything else I did. He said Big Pharma gets a bad rap to the AARP, and he's even called these types of lawsuits shakedowns when he ran in 2015. We need better. We need true dedication to these actions.
Mr. Bevin,
what I said I didn't agree with was you hiring your buddies at Morgan & Morgan to bring that suit and take a huge cut of it. The reality is you're right. The numbers don't lie. And how many dollars have you brought in for all these lawsuits? You've also set a record for suing your own governor among attorney generals in this country. And you're now 2 versus 6 that we've won. I will say this, the only time you have ever been involved with a settlement was when you and your law firm represented Purdue Pharma. You profited from the very crisis that you were pretending to represent. You and your law firm represented Purdue Pharma against the Commonwealth of Kentucky. That is the only victory you have ever had in court on this opioid settlement.
Vicki, this last week we announced $40 million in pharma settlements. That's not bad for a week's work. And to clear the record, wasn't involved in that Purdue Pharma settlement, wasn't even at my law firm at the time, wasn't involved in any way in the Attorney General's office. This is just more of the same from a governor who says that someone commits suicide on a casino floor every night, and that our teachers who came to the Capitol to support public education somehow caused the sexual assault of children. This isn't true, and none of that's true either.
I don't know where this comment about the casinos is. I've never said anything like that in my life. That's absolute malarkey. But I will say this.
You deny saying that?
I do deny saying it.
Really?
Yes.
It's on tape.
I said, no, it isn't on tape. You're not telling the truth. Again, the truth matters. And if it's on tape, I want you to produce that tape and show people where I said this happens on the floor of casinos.
You did not say that someone commits suicide on the floor of a casino.
No, I did not. And you're now stating publicly that I did, so I'm asking you publicly to produce that.
We'll get our researchers on this one.
Let me say, let's do that. But this is important to understand. You were a partner at the firm that defended Purdue Pharma. You and your father both have been partners at the same firm that has defended Purdue Pharma, the makers of OxyContin, against Kentucky. That is a fact. You profited from it. You've never publicly denied that you have profited from it. And we are about to find out, as these public records start to become known, exactly how much you profited.
Have you ever insulted a teacher?
Let me tell you this. The fact that clearly there are people that are insulted by any number of things. It's a question of someone being insulted is very different than whether you said something to insult them. People can be insulted by things.
Please,
none of
let's
the things
move on
that you're
to the next
purporting
question, or
have
I'm
ever
going to be
been said.
insulted, right? Question
You
number
profited
13.
from this.
Kentucky has one of the worst rates of child abuse and neglect in the country. What are you going to do to improve the child welfare system, Mr. Beshear?
One of the reasons that I ran for Attorney General was to better protect all of our children, and I've worked hard. Our Attorney General's office has nearly tripled the number of child predators we've removed from our communities. Last year, we had a record number of arrests of human traffickers, but more importantly, a record number of saves of victims. We have been out there teaching every law enforcement group trauma-centered, victim-centered approaches. We are addressing a culture of sexual assault that exists in Kentucky to try to make sure that no victim is ever asked, what were you wearing or why you were out so late at night? But there is so much more that we need to do. We need to hire more social workers, and we need to finally compensate them for the amazing work they do. That's hard in an environment where the governor tries to cut their pensions and says they are an unskilled profession. We need to make sure that we decrease their caseloads, and we need to make sure that every single cabinet is working together for the betterment of our children, not simply in silos. As governor, I will be directly involved every day in addressing this crisis.
Mr. Bevin.
I'll say this, first of all, nobody's pension has been cut, and in fact, those very same people, I'm the only one that's ever funded their pension, our frontline social workers. I'm also the first person to give them any kind of pay raise as governor in more than a decade. Your father never did in his 8 years, and not only for the frontline workers, but for supervisors as well. This is something that I'm passionate about. I'll tell you what child welfare starts with, though. It starts with defending human life and the dignity of human life. And I am strongly and unapologetically pro-life, very different than the NARAL-supported and Planned Parenthood-supported opponent that I'm standing here with. That's the first thing we can do for child welfare, is protect every life, including the unborn and the innocent. My wife and I have adopted 4 of our 9 children. This is something that we live every single day, and it's something that we're grateful that we can contribute to. We've never seen adoption and foster care elevated to such a high level. We've never seen so many dollars focused on this. We have more than 1,000 more foster families today than we did just 4 years ago. These are things, because it's a passion of mine and my wife's, that we are focusing on like never before. I'll say one final thing real quick. The JAG program, which takes kids that are slipping through the cracks, that had 8 programs in this state, now has 66 programs, and they have a 100% graduation rate. If you're not familiar with it, JAG, Jobs for America's Graduates, check it out, because it should be in every single public school in Kentucky.
Mr. Beshear.
I support Roe v. Wade, but I also support restrictions, especially for late-term procedures. But this governor is an extremist. He believes in a complete and total ban, even for victims of rape and incest. When you're the Attorney General, you work with victims of that trauma, and they deserve options. Under this governor, a 13-year-old raped by a member of her own family and impregnated would have no options. I think that's wrong.
Let me just say this. This is a critical issue. You say these things, but you are supported by take the money from NARAL that insists on abortion up until the moment of delivery. You stand with governors who say that you should decide even after a child is born whether or not that child would live. You're supported by Planned Parenthood that is profited by this. You take money from the abortion doctors in this state. It is critical that you be honest about the fact that you are pro-abortion and stop trying to couch it in all these safe little comments and trying to find examples of things where there might be an exception for this or that.
Folks, it's clear. I'll tell you where I am.
Very clear.
I support reasonable restrictions, especially on late-term procedures, but that 13-year-old that I'm talking about, raped by a member of her family, this governor has told you he's going to eliminate every option for that child.
How many of them were there in Kentucky last year?
Let's move on to our next question, please. Mr. Bevin, the loss of toll credits and stagnant gas tax revenue has many state lawmakers discussing either raising the gas tax or creating a per mileage fee for drivers. Which of these measures, if either, do you support and why?
We need comprehensive tax reform in this state, and it needs to encompass many things, not the least of which is the road tax. We need to get rid of the death tax, we need to get rid of inventory tax, and we need to be able to accommodate these things by making sure that we don't leave the things that are funded by them, our libraries, our fire departments, etc., out to lunch. So the point is, we need to look at all of this. We need to look at our sales tax and our income tax, and we need to look at our road tax, no question about it. Every single penny that the gas tax goes up is about $31 million. $31 million does not go far. We have 2 sources of funds, the Federal Highway Trust Fund, about $750 million, and the gas tax, which is a 9% variable excise tax at the fuel pump. That generates about another $700 million. That's all we have. If we want new bridges, new roads, if we want to be able to take care of the things that we have, it is critical that we have to pay for it. It's like everything. I will not, just as I have not, kick cans down the road. We are going to have an adult conversation among ourselves as legislators, as governors, as people in other elected offices. We're going to have to make a decision about what we want and what we're willing to pay for it.
Mr. Beshear.
It's telling that the governor started answering that question with saying he's going to repeal taxes that only apply to the most wealthy, him and his buddies, while he's going to increase the sales tax, which is on all of the rest of us. I believe that comprehensive tax reform has to lift us up, to make sure that families that are one paycheck away from poverty can actually get to prosperity, that we don't raise a sales tax on people that are just getting by, and we explore new areas of revenue first. Listen, our road budget is going to take short-term fixes and long-term solutions, but it also has to have a vision where we are going to build the I-69 bridge and open Western Kentucky in my first term. It's got to be a commitment to rural roads that are the 7th most dangerous in this country. We lose half the people we lose to the opioid epidemic every month on our rural roads. We got to prioritize projects that will open up entire areas of this state. We've got to make sure that we are investing in our people and that we put our working class families first, not our wealthy buddies.
Rebuttal, Mr. Bevin.
Let me just say this. Ask the people in our transportation department how they're being taken care of. First pay raises they've gotten in a long time. And indeed, when I was elected governor 4 years ago, we had $6 billion in deferred maintenance just on our bridges. We have a program called Bridging Kentucky. We're fixing 1,000 of those right now. More than 400 are underway. More than 100 have already been completed. These, again, were cans that were kicked down the road by multiple previous governors. The bottom line is this: we are spending more than we ever have on deferred maintenance. And the I-69 bridge that you keep referencing, your father ignored that for all of his 8 years, as did governors before him for a dozen years. And I'm the guy who made sure that we forwarded the environmental study, the engineering study, and it will get done in my next term as governor. It'll get done in the next 4 years no matter who's the governor, let's be honest about it, because of the work that's being done in the last 4 years.
Mr. Beshear, looking back over the past 4 years in your position, what is one policy or action that you would do differently, and how would you change it?
Well, I talked to the people of Kentucky when I ran for Attorney General about exactly what I was going to do. I was going to fight to better protect our children. I was going to work to better protect seniors. I was going to address the rape kit backlog, and I was going to work to find solutions to this drug epidemic. 4 years later, I've kept my promises. Tripled the number of child predators we've removed from our communities. We've returned $2.5 million to our seniors that had that money scammed from them. We have now tested every single kit in that backlog, and through a cold case unit in my office and local prosecutors, we have 10 indictments coming out of that backlog. We sued more opioid manufacturers than any other attorney general, and we have won every motion on every case. But I did not get as far as I wanted to on addressing domestic violence. Our statistics are nearly 1 in 2. Nearly 1 in 2 Kentucky women are subjected to some form of sexual or domestic violence in their lifetime, 1 in 2. As a son, as a husband, and as a dad, that is absolutely unacceptable. I'm going to continue to work as governor to make sure that no one is ever unsafe in their own home and that we do so much better.
Mr. Bevin.
I will say this, that rape test kit backlog occurred under your father. That's when it built up. That's the sad reality of it. And the reason it has been eliminated is because of budgeting that I put into our state budget to make sure that it happened. That's the only reason. It didn't come out of your office at all. So you shouldn't be claiming credit for something that you really weren't involved in. Those people who did this don't even work for you. They work in the executive branch. So it's important to understand the truth matters. With respect to the ways in which we care for people in our community, the bottom line is this: we have a responsibility, every one of us, to take care of everybody. That includes the vulnerable. You ask about things that we could do different. I wish we had fixed the pension problem. We haven't fixed the pension problem. I wish we had modernized our tax code. We haven't yet modernized our tax code to make us competitive with states around us. But we have set record levels of things that we need to continue moving forward on. There are many things that I regret that we've not gotten done. I regret the fact that there's still 2,500 children that are in our foster care system waiting for a forever family. We have 6,500 houses of worship in this state. We ought to be able to find one home for every 2.5 churches in the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
Mr. Beshear, rebuttal.
Well, I believe that it is a governor's duty to serve the lost, the lonely, and the left behind. But you don't do that by ripping 95,000 people off their health care coverage. Because when a parent loses health care coverage, the child suffers too. You don't do that by going after teachers and failing to fund schools in a way that give every child true opportunity. You don't do that by threatening the pensions of so many hardworking Kentuckians, 200,000 of them, that keep our community safe, that make sure that neglected children are served, and that ultimately teach in our classroom. We need a governor that will be an example of how we want our children to behave, and certainly our governor should behave better than our children.
That concludes our time for questions. Thank you, gentlemen. We now have time for each candidate to give 90 seconds for a closing statement. Mr. Beshear will go first.
Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and being here tonight. You know, this governor and I disagree on a lot of things, but he said something every now and then that I do agree with him on. The Kentuckians are going to have to choose between one of us. And one way they should think about it is who they would want to lead their company or look after their family. Would it be a governor who has bullied his employees going after teachers? Would it be a governor that gives his buddies exorbitant salaries like Charles Grindle is now earning $375,000 a year of your taxpayer dollars? Would it be somebody who uses the company's property as his playthings, flying the state plane here and using the governor's mansion there? Would it be someone that couldn't get along with their CFO as this governor has bullied his lieutenant governor? Would it be someone that refuses to tell you how much the company pays him as this governor refuses to release his tax returns? Would it be somebody that benefits from his position, getting that mansion at half price from a state contractor? No, it wouldn't be. It would be someone that gives you a vision of a better tomorrow, gives you plans on how we can not be 47th or 48th in things, but that we can be a leader. Our plan to boost jobs across Kentucky for the first time gives Western and Eastern Kentucky real hope, shows you areas where we can be a national leader. But what we desperately need is a governor that can bring us together. One that would never engage in the type of conduct that we've seen, but one that understands once you're elected, you're a governor for all of us, Democrats, Republicans, and independents. And just because someone disagrees with you doesn't make them your enemy. I look forward to being a governor for all of you, and our Capitol doors will always be open.
Mr. Bevin.
I will say this again, thank you to each of you who've taken the time to tune in. We're competing against college football, including UK itself, which for some, maybe not in this town, but in this state is important. So thank you for taking the time to tune in. For those of you who took the time to come out in the rain, this is a big, important decision, and you're right, you do have to choose one of us. You don't get part of me and part of him, or part of yourselves and part of one of us. It is one or the other. One of us will sit down across from the CEOs of companies in this state and outside of this state, and we will make the case for why Kentucky. One of us will be the responsible party for moving this state forward or potentially taking it backwards. I'm the only one on this stage that has created jobs. I'm the only one in the private sector specifically. I'm the only one on this stage that has ever lived below the poverty level. I'm the only one that has ever lived without health care insurance. These things don't make me a better person. It just informs me with a level of empathy and understanding that is not the case for both of us on this stage. I'm married, as I said, with 9 children, 4 of whom are adopted. Every single day of our lives, we pour back into our children because we want for them the better tomorrow that every one of you wants for your children. I love Kentucky. I love America. I once wore this nation's uniform. I was willing to die for this nation, and I still would. I stand proudly with the President of the United States. I respect human life. I respect our Constitution. I respect our right to keep and bear arms. These are fundamental differences between the two of us on this stage. And if I'm elected again, I will fight for you like I would fight for my own family. And I will defend this Commonwealth against everything that might assault it, the way I defended this nation when I wore her uniform 30 years ago.
Thank you to both candidates for taking part in tonight's debate. We certainly appreciate it. We also want to thank the League of Women Voters of Kentucky and Louisville for partnering with WLKY and providing us with the questions. And thank you, of course, for joining us. Remember to vote November 5th. Polls open at 6 o'clock in the morning, close at 6 in the evening. And be sure to follow WLKY's coverage as the results come in on election night. You can follow along on air and online at WLKY.com and, of course, on our mobile app. For WLKY, I'm Vicki Dortch.